Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. I'm Laura of LKG 329 Sales on eBay, Facebook, Instagram, and here on YouTube. I've got another cleaning and listing motivational video for you today, so let's get to it. So to give you a little bit of context for this video, these are items that I sourced on Saturday, April 29th, and my goal was to get all of these items listed the following week, which was May 1st through the 6th. So I began the working on May 2nd, and it was about 3:15 in the afternoon when I got to get started on it, and began by answering a question for this camera that I had listed. A potential buyer had messaged asking for the shutter count on this camera, and I had remembered seeing in a video when I was researching this camera, which I was selling this camera for a friend, but I remembered seeing how to do that. So I was trying to get the camera powered on, and none of the batteries had enough juice in them to power on. So while I let it charge for a minute, I went back and found a video explaining how to do that. And so the way that this was done is you do have to have an SD card in the camera. All you do is take a photo with that camera and upload it to a website called camerashuttercount.com. So you upload it to that website and it will automatically tell you the shutter count for your camera. It should give you the particular make and model of your camera, and in some instances it will actually tell you the percentage of the expected shutter life that has been used on the camera. So it was very neat, very interesting to see, and it was very easy to do. So if you ever need to get a shutter count on a camera, I highly recommend using the camerashuttercount.com website. It was super simple and easy to use. So once I had the camera and its accessories put back away, it was time to start adding to my inventory list all the items from the previous Saturday's haul. Personally, I use a Google Sheets spreadsheet for this, as I'm very much a spreadsheets person, and the information that I keep track of is the purchase date, the location where I purchased the item, the actual item itself, and how much I paid for it. I also include the date I list the item along with the price I listed at, and once the item sells, I will go back in and add the sell date and what it actually sold for, as it could differ from the original listed price if I accept a best offer or if it's purchased while I'm running a sale in my store. Adding items to my inventory list is something I usually do the day I purchase items, but I did not have time to do so that day. I really wanted to include this in the video though, as it is part of my process for reselling on eBay, and it just further helps to put into perspective just how much time it actually takes to be a reseller. One of the things I enjoy about reselling is that every now and then you find something that brings back fun memories, as is happening for me here. I was inventorying some Barbie PC CD-ROM games, and this one is the Horse Adventures Mystery Ride game. I remember this being one of my favorite games to play when I was younger, and I did look to see if there may be an app version I could download on my phone, since I don't have a way to play PC games, but unfortunately there isn't an app version, which may actually be a good thing, as I would spend hours playing it, and I have other things that my time needs to be devoted to. Now, don't get me wrong, I do take time to relax and play games, watch movies, read, and all of that, but I could so easily spend an unhealthy amount of time playing this one. Of course, though, my memory of this game may be exaggerated, and it may not be as good as I remember. There have been a few instances when I've gone back to watch a show I loved or play a game I thoroughly enjoyed as a kid, only to realize that it really wasn't that great, or even good for that matter, but it was certainly a nice moment of nostalgia for me. So have you had any moments like that? You know, just some good memories of things you've completely forgotten about until one day you're outsourcing or going through items you've purchased and something just opens the floodgates and you get to reminisce of days gone by? Let me know in the comments if you have. I'd really enjoy getting to read about that. that the inventorying is complete, it's time to start drafting and listing. I decided to start with these Fitz and Floyd Halloween bunny bloom items, but I followed a little different process than I normally do for these. Typically, when I'm working on listings, I will take a batch of items, clean them up, create drafts, during which time I will double check the comps and decide on my price. And I'll also get the weight and DIMs for shipping and include any needed specifics in the item description box, all from my iPad, as I can type faster on an actual keyboard than I can from my phone. And it also gives me a bigger screen to look at when I'm researching. Once I have the drafts created for several items, I will then move to my phone, open the eBay app, and access my drafts so I can add the pictures directly to the listing, as opposed to taking photos that use up the storage on my phone, then having to transfer them or add them from my camera roll, which runs the risk of adding unwanted photos to the listing, and then having to remember to go back and delete the photos I've already used, which also runs another risk of deleting photos that are still needed for other items. So by taking the photos from the draft with my phone, I can add only the photos I take at that moment, and there's no other steps I have to complete once I've finished taking the pictures that I need. However, with these items, because they are in boxes with styrofoam and I was already having to take them out of the boxes in order to ensure the item description was accurate, I went ahead and created the draft from my iPad as I normally would, but then I immediately went to my phone and took the pictures so I wouldn't have to take each item out of its box a second time later just for the photos. Now, I could have left them out of the boxes while I finished drafting the others, but I'm somewhat limited on space and I did not want to risk knocking anything over or having something fall and break, so I wanted to limit the amount of time they were out of the box, and this seemed to be the best available option. I was very happy that these items were in as good of a condition as they are, since I didn't open every box and look at them before I purchased them. I did open a few and they looked very well cared for. The only issue I noticed was that a couple had some glaze crazing, but I feel like these are used more for decoration as opposed to being used to actually serve food or snacks, in which case the glazing isn't a big deal. But I did document this in the item descriptions for the few that do have the crazing and made sure to get the best photos I could to show the extent of it. Overall, the majority didn't have any issues at all. None of them had any chips or cracks, so these ended up being a pretty good buy. Now I've made it to the few that were not in boxes, and I did end up taking these into the kitchen for a good hand wash. I'm guessing that since they weren't in boxes, it was easier for them to get dirty, and I felt like they needed a bit more than just a wipe off like the other ones. So I gave them a good wash and put them into some fresh bubble wrap for storage until they sell. The two plates here, though, also had some thick, sticky residue on the bottoms that I'm guessing was from the price tags, which was not playing nice about coming off. I ended up taking just a small amount of WD-40 to those spots, which quickly and easily took it off, and then very thoroughly washed them. was thinking the other day about my first sale when I started on eBay. It was a bit discouraging because it ended up being a scammer. I only had a few items on the site and received my first offer on a dress for $8 that I had listed for $9.99. I was very excited and accepted it pretty quickly and got to hear my first cha-ching, which was awesome. They didn't pay immediately, which was fine, but then I received a message from them saying they had some questions about the item, sent me a phone number, and asked me to text them. Thankfully, I have a friend who was helping me learn the ropes to get started and had warned me about scammers. I also have a background working in human resources for a decent sized school system and had received yearly training on what to look for in order to determine if a message was legitimate or just a phishing scam. The wording and spelling just didn't seem right, and there's also the little fact that eBay does not allow communication on potential transactions outside of their messaging system. So I responded letting the buyer know that I would be more than happy to answer any questions they may have, but it would have to stay on the eBay Messenger. I never got a response and canceled the order after the 4-day waiting period and relisted it. The dress did sell later on, but it was pretty annoying for that to be my first experience. If you're watching this and are just getting started, please be aware that getting scammed is a possibility and that all communication with buyers is to stay within the eBay messaging system. eBay does monitor this, and any alternative contact information you provide to a buyer through the system will have consequences. Also, if you do end up dealing with a scammer, don't give up and say that it's not worth it. I've had nearly 450 sales at this point and have only had to deal with 2 or 3 scammers, so yes, they are out there, but they make up a pretty insignificant part of it. Just be on guard and do as much as you can to protect yourself as a seller, but also allow yourself to enjoy the roller coaster of a ride that it is. You may have noticed that I'm spending a decent amount of time on my phone without actually taking pictures at this point. I left this in the video because it is eBay related. I had received another question about the camera I was selling for a friend that you saw toward the beginning, and so I was messaging with the potential buyer as well as my friend, making sure that my answers were accurate as I'm not very familiar with cameras. The potential buyer then sent an offer, but while I was checking that my friend was good with the price, the buyer went ahead and paid the full listed price for it at $400, which is the highest value sale I've had to date in my store. My friend was happy with it, I was happy with it, and the buyer was also happy with it and left some great feedback for my store. Now, selling items for friends is not something that I do much, and I don't really recommend it. I've not had a bad experience with it, but I know of others who have, and so perhaps a better option would be to outright buy the items from the friend or even pay an agreed price up front. And then if the items sell for a higher price than expected, maybe, give your friend a bit more for it at that time. I say this because you can't really tell how long it will take for the item or items to sell, and it could have potential to harm the friendship if things are not handled well. I'm comfortable enough with the two friends, and they understand that I am still just getting started in this, but it's definitely not something that I'd plan to do on a consistent basis going forward. So I was able to get all of the Fitz and Floyd items drafted and photographed this day. I had spent about 4.5 hours working, and once I put the items on my listed shelving and scheduled out those completed listings, I decided to call it a night. Now on to the next day, which was Wednesday. I only had about an hour for eBay stuff this day, but still wanted to accomplish what I could. I started with these wall-mounted golf bag holders. This particular package had a sticker on it that didn't want to come off and left behind some sticky residue. On this one, I just used some rubbing alcohol to get that off since it wasn't near as bad as what was on the plates earlier. I had purchased 11 of these holders, but decided to do a single quantity listing with multiples available since they are all exactly the same. This definitely saved me time as I was able to do just one listing instead of 11 individual listings. There was one little difference in these, which was the condition of the packaging. None of them were open, but some of the casings were a bit scuffed and bent. I selected the worst looking one for the photos as I would rather send an item to a buyer with packaging that looks better than shown in the photos as opposed to the other way around. Next, I grabbed this pink bin as it had all the items I had purchased from one specific yard sale in it and started with the PC CD-ROM games. I didn't get all of them drafted, but I did do as many as time allowed me to. The first one is actually a sealed copy. There were a few listed and a couple that sold fairly cheap, but I decided to list this one by itself at a bit higher price because it is sealed. I had originally planned to list these boxed Barbie PC games individually, but as I researched them, I discovered that they weren't as valuable as I had hoped. Each one does have some value to it, but not enough to do an individual listing for each one, so I did end up deciding to list them together as a lot instead of individually, as it gave me a little bit of a higher value for that listing. I ended up being able to get a couple of more games done after looking at the Barbie ones, but that was all I had time for this day. And now it's Friday, since I did not have the time to do anything on Thursday, but this did end up being the longest eBay working day for me of the week. I decided to start with washing the dishes I had purchased instead of picking up where I left off on drafting the PC games so the dishes could dry while I went back and worked on the other stuff afterwards. I got a little tickled with myself when I was working on the salt and pepper shaker set as I was washing the stoppers. The pepper stopper is discolored, so it was easy to find in the water, but I had some trouble finding the salt stopper. It had pretty well disappeared in the water since it was nothing more than just a small, clear piece of plastic. So I've mentioned on more than one occasion in my videos that I just do not care for selling glass items. There's so much risk of breaking them, especially since I'm not the most graceful person around, and I have nearly broken several items while cleaning or pulling the item to package it up, but glassware is just so prevalent in my area that it's hard for me to not get any. I need to dedicate some time to researching brands and patterns to have a better idea of what actually sells, as I've already got some idea as to what doesn't sell since it's still sitting on my shelves after having been listed for months. But that's all being chalked up to a learning experience for me. Now, I never go outsourcing with the intention of purchasing glass, but like Chris from OSP has said, you gotta sell what you find. As I'm washing the dishes, I'm paying close attention to them and checking for any issues that I probably missed during my inspection prior to buying them. One reason I try to always wash glass items is not only so they look better for the photos, but it's also a good way to check that the glazing is fully intact. I've noticed that there are times when the only way to tell that there is an issue with the glaze is to get the dish wet and see if there ends up being any discoloration on it. That is a sure sign that either the glaze wasn't applied to that spot or that the glaze has cracked and is no longer sealing and protecting the dish as it should, but I was very happy to find that none of these had that issue. Unfortunately, I did find the one plate that had the chip out of it and this second plate that has a crack in it, but these were the only two pieces of all the dishes that had any problems. Now it's back to drafting the PC games and finishing up the other items that are in this pink bin. I find it interesting how there are times when you go to multiple different sales and find a lot of the same items, like these PC games, for instance. I never saw any of these while I was outsourcing last year, though I very likely just overlooked them. But then this year I found them at a few sales. And same thing with Boyd's Bears figurines. I don't remember seeing them at all last year, but then this year I've found two very decent sized lots of them already. Now, last year I was finding vinyl records and DVD VCR players everywhere I turned, but I don't think I've found any so far this year. So this is definitely a pretty long video for me, and I certainly could have, probably should have, divided it into two, but it's all from a single week of work with a specific goal to get all the items from a particular haul listed. So I really wanted to try and keep it all together. I don't typically spend this much time cleaning and listing in any given week. I guess about 7 hours would be my average. But I was also trying to get as far ahead as I possibly could, since I knew I would not be able to do much, if anything, the following week. I ended up with a vascular mass on my right hand, which is my dominant hand, that I've opted to have removed. It's nothing that required immediate surgery and could have been left alone without causing any issues, but because of where it was, it did give me trouble and could get pretty painful at times. So getting it taken care of before the summer when there's so much going on was definitely my preferred choice. This week ends up being 13 and a half hours worth of work that I've tried to find a good balance on the speed for, so that it's not painstakingly slow, but not so fast that you can't really tell what all is happening or what I'm working on. If you have made it this far into the video, leave a roller coaster emoji in the comments, or even tell me what your favorite type of amusement park ride is, so I'll know how interesting this type of content is for you. Working on these All-American Edition Trivial Pursuit quiz cards was honestly something I should have skipped once I realized I wasn't going to list it because of how incomplete the set is. But it was one of those things where I had started organizing the cards and I just had to finish. Each of the cards has a number on it, and I put them into numerical order. The first 400 cards were there, but there was a lot missing after that. I ended up deciding to give these to a friend who enjoys the game and has just mentioned in past conversation that they would like to get some different cards. Now that I have several drafts created for these items, it's time to grab my phone and move on to taking the photos. I cleared the table and gave it a quick wipe down to get the best pictures that I could. Here you'll notice that I start looking around my eBay space. I was pretty sure I didn't have any empty disc covers or sleeves lying around, but just took a moment to double check. Now these PC games are already in paper sleeves, but they were very dingy looking sleeves and looked like they had actually sat in water at some point. The discs are absolutely fine. It looks more like the seller probably had a pack of sleeves that had gotten wet in the past and just used them to help protect the discs from getting any further wear or scuffs on them. I did not have any sleeves, and I know I could have reused the ones they were already in, but I didn't want to put freshly cleaned discs back into dirty looking sleeves, so I selected another option. I didn't want to take the time to go to the store and buy new sleeves yet, so I decided to take some 2 foot by 2 foot sheets of packing paper that I had and folded and tore them down to smaller pieces that were big enough to put in between the discs, and then took a couple of rubber bands to help hold them in place. I didn't use scissors for this because I can't cut straight for anything, so I simply folded the paper and then pinched the fold between my thumb and pointer fingernails and slid all along the fold to weaken the paper so it would only tear on the fold I had just made. Now I will go to the store and I will get sleeves for these before I actually ship any of them out. So this game here was an interesting game. It's the Barbie fashion designer game, and I was going to throw away most of what was in the box with the exception of the disc, the user guide, and there's a small pack of 5 pairs of Barbie shoes in it. But then I took a moment and read the guide and realized that all of it was supposed to be there. So this game actually came with fabric that you could print on, along with some wedding veil material, ribbons, rosettes, glitter glue, and other stuff that you could actually make your own outfits for your Barbie doll. So I almost messed it up, but I'm glad that guide was in there. But then just a few moments later, I noticed that there was also a list of contents on the back of the box. Now, with these last few game discs, I had a little blast from the past as I remembered that I know how to make disc sleeves from paper. We used to make these all the time in elementary school because none of us could keep up with CD cases, and at that time everyone was also burning custom CDs. So you either bought sleeves or made your own, and making them was way more fun than paying for them. So I did make sleeves for these last few discs by taking a wide sheet of paper and folding it up about an inch from being right in half, folded the sides over just a bit and taped them in place, then folded that extra inch at the top over and taped it down so the disc would stay in place. I will still buy and put these in proper sleeves before shipping them out, but I did enjoy having a bit of fun making my own. It's supper time. You want supper. Next, I moved on to these large plush. The green frog is actually from a different haul, but it's the only other unlisted plush item that I had, so I decided to go ahead and include him here since each of these are big enough to sell on their own, and I'm doing 3 listings per day at this time, so it gave me a day's worth of listings by including it. When I'm working on plush, I make sure to run my fingers over all the seams to check for any holes that might be there, and if I find any, I'll decide whether it's worth the time to fix it or not before moving on to the next one. A quick tip if you're using a small postal scale like I have here when you're getting a weight for these is to put a bin on the scale and zero it out by hitting the tare button, or you could simply put the bin on it before turning the scale on and then put the plush in the bin. This will give you an accurate weight for it without having to try and fold it up just right so it can actually sit on the scale on its own. Once I had the drafts completed, I started to clean the plush by taking a small bowl of warm water with just a couple of drops of Dawn dish soap in it, and I used a mini nail brush from the Dollar Tree to give everything a light scrub. This large bear gave me the most trouble. It apparently had dust all over it, and as I would scrub with the wet brush, the dust would clump up and just cling to the fabric, which was very difficult to remove. I eventually realized that going over it with a dry brush first would remove the dust and make scrubbing it with the wet brush so much easier. After I had all of these scrubbed down, I set them aside for a bit to dry while I worked on drafting some other items. I'm now working on the final batch of items for this day. There's some fall decor items, a multi-CD case, a Mickey Mouse train set, an audiobook, and a few more PC games. The way I clean these discs is I have rubbing alcohol in the little blue bottle and it's set to a fine mist when sprayed. I take each disc, give it a spritz, and gently wipe from the center of the disc to the outside with a microfiber cloth to remove any oils or other particles from the disc, being very careful not to press too hard and accidentally scratch the disc. So this is the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse train set, and I got tickled at myself while I was trying to make sure all the pieces were there. It took me a few tries, but I did finally manage to figure out how they went together, and all the pieces are there. Unfortunately, there is a broken piece. So there's a blue strip on the main yellow piece that lowers down when you toggle a switch so the train can continue to run without getting stuck, but the switch for that is broken. So I took the yellow piece apart and removed the broken pieces so the blue strip would stay down and not hinder the train's movement. I did still list it, but at a much lower price, and made sure to include this information in the description. with the drafts finally completed for this day, I started on the last round of photos. So I now have these items finished and the listings are scheduled out over several days. By the time I completed all of this, I had been working for over 7 hours just on eBay, not to mention the non-eBay related tasks I had completed earlier that morning. So it was a long day and very exhausting for me, but I was happy with the progress I had made. I wrapped the evening up by moving these items to my listed inventory shelves and relaxed for a bit. So I had pretty well resigned to Friday being the last day that I was going to work on these listings and accepting defeat of not getting everything listed like I had hoped to. But Saturday evening came around and I decided I would spend one more hour working on these, and I was 5 days out on my listings and I really wanted to try and get a few more days done if I could, and so I did end up getting 2 more days worth of listings done this night. This particular set of salt and pepper shakers that I'm working on here were very surprising. I picked these up for 25 cents and started researching them, and there was a sold comp for a brand new set at $99 for these. And there was only one other set listed on eBay for, I think it was $250. And then there was a single salt shaker listed for $75. So I did end up listing these for $99. They're used, but they, outside of the pepper stopper being discolored, there's absolutely no issue with them whatsoever. Probably will not sell at that price, but it's a little bit easier to list high and bring your price down as opposed to listing low and raising your price up later. set of dishware here. This is Sheffield Regency Gold, and it has a Christmas tree pattern on all of the dishes. And I could find the Sheffield Regency Gold without the Christmas trees, but I could not find any with them. So I don't know, even with Google Lens, I couldn't find any that looked exactly like this. So I kind of just based my pricing on the plain Regency Gold dishware that was out there that had sold, and went just a little bit higher because apparently these are fairly rare. They're either rare or they're not desirable enough for others to sell. So we'll find out exactly which one it is if these sell. But I ended up only doing a few of the dishes. All this where the cups are at the lower right hand corner of the screen, I decided to stop and wait on listing those till later because I was closing in on that 1 hour mark, and I knew I wasn't going to get it done. So I had accepted the little bit of defeat at this point that I would not get all of the items listed. But by the time I finished, I had just this bit of dishware here left, and just a few other items, enough to do at 3 listings a day. I think there was enough to do 3 more days worth of listings. So I wasn't far from being done, but it was late. I was exhausted from the week trying to make sure that I had everything ready and was prepared to rest the following week. And so I did just go ahead and stop, and it was good enough, and I had my listing scheduled all the way out through the following Saturday. And now on to the numbers portion of the video for those of you who are interested in this. The total time that I spent cleaning and listing was 13 hours and 30 minutes, which I've rounded to 15 hours to include time for sourcing and shipping these items when and if they sell. The total number of listings I was able to generate were 36, and at 3 listings per day, which is what I'm currently doing, I was able to get 12 days worth of listings. The total listed price for these items is $765.54. My cost of goods is at $104.25. I've estimated the eBay fees at $105, which includes the 30-cent final value fee per listing, in addition to 12% of the listed price. Now that is subject to change because the percentage that eBay charges per item varies by category depending on how you have your item listed. And then there's also the factor of the items could potentially sell on best offers, or even if I run a sale on my store. So this is just an estimation. This is not a pinpoint number on the eBay fees. Next, I've got estimated shipping supplies at $10. Now, I do order and use the free USPS priority mailboxes as often as possible. However, those cannot be used for first-class items. They cannot be used for medium mail items. And so I do have to purchase some boxes, and then there's also packing tape, packing paper, bubble wrap, the business cards that I purchase and put in each order that goes out. So there is some cost in there. It's not a lot, but there is some cost, and that is, once again, not an exact number, just an estimate. So my potential profit for these items, which is going to be the total listed price minus the cost of goods, the estimated fees, and the estimated shipping supply cost, is $546.29. I do not expect it to be exactly this amount. A lot of my items do sell on best offers, and so this would be a best case scenario on the profit. And when you divide that by the 15 hours that I'm using for getting these items ready, the potential hourly rate comes in at $36.42. Now, keeping in mind that that is not an immediate return, I will not see any of that until the items actually sell, which could take weeks, months, and hopefully not, but even a year or two before they actually sell. So $36 an hour is really, really good, but it is spread out over time, it's not an immediate return. So, and also too, this was an exceptional week. I very seldom do I ever spend this much time, for now anyways, working with listing on eBay. And so this number is usually closer to the $20 potential hourly rate mark. But this one, I'm really happy with this one. I'm also getting better with my sourcing as far as getting better items now that I'm kind of learning how eBay works and the items that sell a bit better. Now, I am by no means an expert. Please do not think that that is what I'm saying, because I am by far not. But it is interesting to see these numbers and how everything plays out. Well, that was a lot of work, and I did not get every single item listed like I had hoped to, but still, I got listings scheduled out for the entire week while I'm recovering from the minor little hand surgery that I've had, and so I was very pleased with that. Didn't get quite as far out on the listings as I had hoped to, but I did not have any more time to devote to eBay that week. So I'm happy with the ground that I did make on it, and I'm looking forward to being able to get back to it and get the rest of those items listed. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, feel free to hit that subscribe button as well, clicking that bell so you can be notified when new videos are uploaded. Also, feel free to leave me a comment below if you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.